So basically any respected agency by the government can control content that the government feels should be blocked. Now, in regards to Pakistan and the web management system that is in place over there, it is being used as a way for the government to censor some websites at a national level. And now what we can say, what they want to do with the national firewall is to classify who might be connecting with whom as a pretext to analyze traffic.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Digital Rights series for DawnNews English. Today I have with me Hajira Mariam, and she's a spokesperson and media manager with Amnesty Tech at Amnesty International. Thank you, Hajira, for joining us today. As you are aware, there's a lot of conflation going on in the Pakistani media, also with respect to what technical capability exists. Interchangeably, firewall, web monitoring or management system is being used. Could you first tell us about Amnesty Tech and the work that Amnesty does? And then we'll go into the kind of technologies and the debate that is happening around in the Pakistani context.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Farieha, and thanks a lot for having me. So to begin with, Amnesty Tech is quite a big team of hackers, technologists, data scientists, researchers, campaigners, and journalists as well. And we are quite multifaceted in nature. So we do look into like subjects of surveillance and spyware, for instance. Then we also look into big tech accountability, like big platforms like TikTok and Meta, and what is their human rights responsibilities. We also look into the use of artificial intelligence technologies, surveillance, especially when they're used in the public sector, mostly around welfare distribution and so on. It's quite a big arm of Amnesty International, I would say. Main focus is basically looking into all things technology and human rights altogether.
Great. And could you tell us a little bit about the statement that was recently issued by Amnesty about what is happening in Pakistan in the context of the firewall or web monitoring system or internet disruptions that have been reported on?
Sure, Farieha. Yeah, so the statement was actually by one of my colleagues, Hooray. And our statement is basically a response to a pattern and things that we have been observing for the past a month or so, or a couple of weeks, about ongoing internet disruptions, but they have also been coupled. There's a lot of lack of transparency as well around surveillance and monitoring technologies that are being deployed in Pakistan. The Pakistani authorities have been extremely opaque regarding the use of monitoring and surveillance technologies that block content, slow down internet speeds, control internet speeds. And this is a massive alarming concern for Amnesty International, because time and again we have seen that how such technologies, including national firewalls, so to speak, they are proven to be extremely incompatible with human rights. And then these tools are quite pervasive in nature as well, because they do undermine online freedom of expression and access to information. And we need to understand that the internet is extremely critical for enjoyment of certain rights by the public, such as citizen self-expression, e-commerce, so to speak, and the digital economy as well.
Absolutely. And all sectors have been impacted. Now, again, in the absence of disclosure by the government or the PTA, we don't know exactly what system has been deployed or what is going on. But given Amnesty's work and your experience of what has been deployed elsewhere in the world and what is a national firewall or web monitoring system, are these the same because they're being used interchangeably, at least in the Pakistani context? Are they different? There's also a lot of conflation between content filtering and surveillance. So if you could maybe just unpack, at least from the national firewall and the web monitoring system perspective, not necessarily what may be here in Pakistan, but typically what is understood by these terms.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the concepts and the tools like national firewalls and the web monitoring system, both of them, they kind of relate to governments or organizations, for instance, trying to control the internet and oversee internet usage. But they do kind of differ in their mechanisms, scopes, and purposes as well. So this is like a broader picture, and I'm more than happy to, of course, talk more about in Pakistan context as well. So yeah, just to begin with, like national firewalls, you think of it like a security guard on your network. And what it does, it basically watches the data that comes in and goes out. For instance, content filtering basically means the government can block keywords, URLs, and or specific IP addresses. It can also block websites that the government consider to be inappropriate for the control. For instance, governments of China, Algeria, and Vietnam, from what we know, have blocked Amnesty International's websites as well. So basically, what that also does is it just blocks information that is provided by Amnesty International to the world about human rights abuses, right? So basically, any respected agency by the government can control and block content that the government feels should be blocked. Now, in regards to Pakistan and the web management system that is in place over there, it is being used as a way for the government to censor some websites at a national level. And now what we can say, what they want to do with a national firewall is to classify who might be connecting with whom as a pretext to analyze traffic, for instance. And the national firewall uses what we could say an advanced monitoring system that can classify traffic in a way. So for example, this is what we typically saw with happening to WhatsApp in Pakistan, that videos and images were not being sent through, and so on and so forth.
So is network filtering different from network monitoring? And what are some of the tech methods or tools used? Because we are also hearing about deep packet inspection in the Pakistani context, which was there previously when Sandvine had been acquired or deployed, and now we're hearing about this again.
Yeah, sure. So network monitoring is a way, for example, we can see and classify internet and say something like, oh, you are using VPN, and block that without having to add a ban to a specific domain. They can ban VPNs at a protocol level, so to speak. And this is done through a technique that is called deep packet inspection. And network filtering is more like the web monitoring system that has been used in Pakistan. It's more black and white and very straightforward. And a user, basically, they just can't access a website X or Y on a national level.
And is this a firewall or a web monitoring system different from spyware? Because some of that conflation was happening as well.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I did see a lot of reports online and issues around social media. It's completely different. It is these are really different technologies that we are talking about now. Spyware, to be really exact, is a malicious software, and it interferes with a device's normal operation to collect information, and it doesn't alert the user, and it sends it to an unauthorized entity. And there is spyware, but there is also something which we call highly invasive spyware, which is the Pegasus spyware, and it allows unlimited access to a device by default, and it literally leaves little to no trace. So for the user, it's almost impossible to know what data was exactly taken. And it can target any connected device, for instance, most likely phones, computers, and other devices that connect to the internet. And of course, this is like a very different technology than a firewall or a web management system that is basically all about blocking or analyzing internet traffic, but doesn't give any access to any of your devices.
Absolutely. And also because in this context, because there's so much conflation going on, what technology is, and there's been a lot of concern whether content data can be accessed, and I don't think that the distinction between traffic data or data packet or payload, as it is called, versus content data is that clear, right? And so that is raising questions about can it affect or compromise TLS or SSL or end-to-end encryption? Because what, in your view, and what we know of technology and this secure protocols, so to speak, can you speak to a little bit about this in terms of how secure these are and if there are any vulnerabilities?
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, the conflation around surveillance tech always happens. It's not something that, it's nothing new for us. So yeah, basically, if we are looking into a national firewall or a web monitoring system, so to speak, it cannot compromise TLS and end-to-end encryption at all. It just cannot. However, highly invasive spyware and spyware can bypass this encryption if a device is infected. And then now, if we are looking in the Pakistan context, yes, there is a web monitoring system and there is most likely a national firewall. But Amnesty International has literally no insight that any highly invasive spyware is being used in Pakistan. And additionally, what they can do, because they don't have access to content as it's encrypted, it is metadata analysis, which means that they can see who's communicating with who for how long and how often, and build profiles basically out of people and their social network. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of web monitoring system and the national firewall. And seriously, going forward in regards to spyware in Pakistan, recently on Twitter, we did observe that one of our investigations about predator files was being used to misinform the public that there is spyware in Pakistan. But that is completely false. Our Predator file investigation actually unpacks that some surveillance technologies by Intellectual Alliance was being exported to Pakistan, but spyware was not one of them.
Thank you, Hajira, for breaking all of this down. This has been very helpful, and thank you for making time for DawnNews English for the digital rights series. This is all for today. We will obviously keep watching what is happening, if there is any further disclosure, and it is difficult to say concretely what has been deployed unless the government and the PTA actually put anything on record. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Farieha.